Hey everyone, Dan Casas Murray with Startup Sac here. If you're a founder that's new in Sacramento, or you're new to Sacramento and you're a founder and you've talked with a few people in the community about launching your startup, you might have sensed that there is something bigger here. Like there's this network of people that's around that are willing to help you with your startup, and you would be correct. Now, maybe you've also seen this thing, maybe not, but one thing's for sure. This map right here that says Startup Sacramento Ecosystem is a lot. There's a lot of circles, there's lines, and there's colors, and there's all these like little connections and everything like that. But what if I told you that it's a map that can guide you through your startup journey in this town? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use it to find investors, co-founders, and get some startup knowledge that will help you launch in Sacramento. Then we'll take a look at what a typical founder's journey can look like right here. So at the end of this video, you'll have the ability to make full use of this map so you can plug into the entire startup community that's at your back in Sacramento. So let's dive in. So I'd like to introduce you to my friend Mike. Mike works for a technology company in the area, and he has decided, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to break out. I'm going to start a side hustle. I'm going to create an app, and it's going to change the world. So being convinced, he calls up his friend Janice, who's in the startup community herself, and he says, hey, Janice, I want to get started here. What am I going to do? And she's like, well, you need to find investors, co-founders, you need to bid out your model and everything like that. And Mike's like, that sounds great. Where do I find the money people? Because, you know, it seems like that's where I got to go. And she's like, well, they're here, but... And he's like, what? And she's like, well, they're in places. And he's like, well, what places are they in? And she's like, well, okay, so I'll just show this to you real quick on the map here, right? Look at this diagram and you'll see the green line, right? Green for money. And those are the people that are in Sacramento that are going to fund startups. And so Mike's like, okay, well, that's really cool. So thanks. I don't know what the issue was. And she's like, well... there's some questions that those folks are going to ask you once you get there. And he's like, I'm not afraid of any questions. And she's like, well, you have to have answers, like good, solid answers that are provable. And he's like, okay, well, what are the questions? And she's like, well, they're going to ask you who's on your team. They're going to ask you about your product, maybe some unit economics, maybe some market, maybe some roadmap stuff. And then also they're going to ask you, hey, do you have customers yet? And who are those customers? So Mike's like, ooh, okay, well, I guess I got some work to do. Maybe I'll need some help with this. And she's like, yeah, you got to find a co-founder. And he's like, but wait a minute, I don't have one. I just have an app that I want to build. And she's like, well, look, dude, you got to find a co-founder. And he's like, oh, where? Where am I going to find this person? She's like, you know what? We got you. Because look, at this map, there are a bunch of events that you can actually go to meet co-founders and meet people. And there's events and there's also co-working spaces and all that other kind of stuff. And they're right here on the map. So Mike's like, okay, well, that wasn't really that hard. I guess I just need to start building my prototype out now and meet some other people. And she's like, yeah, but there's also some more. And he's like, oh, okay, tell me, because you've done this before. And she's like, well, look, there's business stuff that we have to learn, right? And like where to find customers, who the customers are, what the segments look like, how to actually plan out the business and articulate it to somebody. And the way that you can learn how to do all of that is by going to some of those education resources and programs that are offered in Sacramento right here. And they're on this line on the left-hand side, on the educate line. So he's like, whoa, I mean, this is going to be more than what I thought it would be. And she's like, yeah, for sure. And she's like, but think about it like this. You've been in New York before? Mike's like, yeah. She's like, you know how like at first it's really overwhelming and there's all these streets and cafes and all these places you have to go. She's like, yeah. She's like, think about the map like that, right? Like you can go and visit each place one at a time and you can get what you need there. And this is the map that actually help you get to where you're going. And so he's like, okay, but wait a minute, like New York maps have streets. And she's like, yeah, but this one has people. So just think about it like that. And he's like, okay. She's like, look, using this map, you can find mentors, you can find teachers that have been around for a while. You can find people in the same boat, right? And you can also find connections to customers. And eventually, yeah, sure, you get to the money folks. And so Mike's like, Okay, so if I'm going to get started, I guess I thought I needed funding first and then I needed to find a co-founder, but maybe I need to do this the other way around. Maybe I need to learn a little bit about business, learn about startup stuff, and maybe as I'm doing that, I can find a co-founder and eventually get to a place where I'm getting funding. And so Janice is like, yeah, totally. That sounds like a great plan. It'll take some time too because, it's a journey. So later that week, Janice and Mike are having coffee and they're talking about Mike's plans and they're talking about Janice's plans and everything like that. And who comes in but Beth and her co-founder. And Janice is like, whoa, it's been like months since I've seen you last. And Beth's like, yeah, we've been really busy. We're working on some funding and closing around and everything. And Janice is like, you know what? Do you mind if we buy you a cup of coffee? Because, we got some questions. And so Beth's like, yeah, sure. You know what? You're a new founder, Janice, and we want to help and everything like that. And Janice is like, well, my friend Mike too, he's getting ready to start a company. And Beth is like, okay, look, let me break it down for everybody here. So here's what happened with me. So I used this diagram to get started, and this is basically what happened, right? So like the first thing I did is I started going to like events just to network and meet people. And I went to places like Startup Happy Hour, presented my startup at 1 million cups. I get the Startup Digest, which is like this newsletter that comes out once a week about everything startup in Sacramento. And then I even got some help with some mentors by going to Mentor Sacramento there. And while I was at those events, I was talking to people and everybody said, look, you should probably learn a little bit more about startups. You should learn about customer development, all that kind of stuff. And she's like, okay, cool. So I looked at the map and I went to different courses that are offered in Sacramento, and most of these are pretty low cost. So I went to Lean Innovator, which taught me how to create a value proposition, how to find customers. I went to Virtual Toolkit series at the Carlson Center and learned how business models in general work, and those are free programs, by the way. I went to Startup Sac Office Hours, which is also free, which is sort of like lunch and learn that happens on the regular. And then I also got free business counseling at the Small Business Development Center, the SBA, California Capital Women's Business Center, SCORE, and all those different places. She's like, it was incredible to have those kinds of resources. And then once I knew a little something about, startups and everything like that, I was like, okay, maybe it's time to like take this to the next level and get ready to start, pitching my startup. And so I went to a couple of accelerators, like right here on this map right here. You can see that, you can go to Big Bang, you can go to Growth Factory, you can go to Fourth Wave, and all these are different accelerators in the area. And oh, by the way, that's where I met my co-founder, and we started working on this thing together, and it's like, taking off. So finally, we got to a place where we decided we were ready to go ahead and fund. And we looked up some of the active funders in the area, and we found Sac Angels, we found Growth Factory Ventures, and we found Moneda. And so after that, we were actually featured in the region's local business publication, and they honored us with the title of Startup of the Month. So it has been a wild ride, but one that has been pretty cool. And so everybody's like, wow, Beth, that is such a great story. And Mike is even more fired up now. And him and Janice are just like so happy that they ran into Beth and her co-founder that they're like, okay, we're really motivated now. And so Mike's like, let's do this. If you're like Mike and you're ready to get started, then this is how you can use the map. The first thing that you want to do is you want to say, okay, where am I at and where am I trying to go? And who can actually help me with that? And then the second thing you want to look for is, okay, well, where do I need to go to learn about startups? Where do I need to go to meet people? Where do I need to go to like build out my thing, work on it with other people and all that other kind of stuff. And then eventually I wanted to get to the investors so that I can actually like get started making this thing that's going to impact the rest of humanity. And then the third thing that you do is you look on that map there and you see, okay, well, these are the nodes that I can go to. These are the active ones. And you click on one of the nodes there, you find out some more information, you connect, and then you're off and running. Now, one of the cool things that I want to highlight on this map is that you see all these little lines and everything like that? What they do is they represent the connections that people have with each other within the ecosystem, right? Because we're all connected. And the second thing that I want to show you is this part down here where there's different spaces where you can connect with your peers, other startup founders, and people working on creating impactful startups for humanity. And oh, by the way, there are different verticals that are represented in this diagram. So two of the ones are Clean Start, which is, you guessed it, clean technology, and Ag Start, which is agricultural technology, ag tech. Those are just a couple. It's not limited to just that in Sacramento. There are a lot of cool opportunities, a lot of different people to meet here. And I'm excited for you as you begin your journey. So that is the map. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with me and allowing me to explain that to you. In the beginning of the video, I said I was going to show you how you can use that map to find investors, co-founders, and get some startup knowledge that'll help you launch in Sacramento. And then I said, okay, well then we'll take a look at what a typical founder's journey can look like here. And so hopefully by now you have the ability to make full use of the entire startup community that's at your back in Sacramento.